Another Monday, another episode of the Ask Me Anything series. I think this is like the third or fourth episode of this season. I hope everybody had a great weekend. Lots of really good questions this week, so I'm excited to get started, but as always, I want to give a huge thank you to every single one of you who left a comment on the post. Obviously, I can't feature them all, but just know I do read every single comment, and I appreciate all of you guys. So with that all being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first question from Toronto Maple Leafs fan who says, does Joseph Woll stay in the NHL and become the Leafs' second or third goalie? Also, I appreciate the kind words. I definitely don't think he becomes the second goalie, at least yet anyways. He's definitely still behind Peter Mrazek and Jack Campbell on the depth chart when they're healthy. I will say though, even though he had a bit of a stinker last night against the Jets, I feel like Joseph Woll has definitely passed Michael Hutchinson in the Maple Leafs goaltending depth charts. It's easier to call him up and send him down because he doesn't have to go through waivers as to where Michael Hutchinson does, and he could easily just get claimed. And in the 4 games he's played overall, again with the exception of last night, and I don't even think he was that bad, his overall body of work in the NHL so far has been pretty good. So I would definitely say he's the Leafs' third goaltender now for sure. The next question comes from Dean Smith who says, damn, always get these late, thanks YouTube with your crappy notification system. We'll try again. Who do you think will be the next coach to be fired? When I was picking out the questions for this video this morning, my answer to this in my head was Alain Vigneault, but he literally got fired a couple of hours ago, so I can't say him anymore. I can't say Travis Green because he got fired last night. Those were like the 2 most likely candidates. Aside from those 2 guys who have already been fired, I have a hard time thinking of anybody else. I'm trying to think of teams that came into the season with high expectations and have really underachieved. Obviously Vancouver and Philadelphia both were in that category, but they fired their coaches. Another team in that category would be the New York Islanders. They've obviously had a pretty poor start to the season. Their playoff hopes are dwindling away as each game passes, but no matter how bad of a season they have, I really can't see them firing Barry Trotz just because he's done wonders for that team ever since becoming the bench boss. I feel like they'd definitely be a little bit more patient with Barry Trotz. Like, this season could go and they could miss the playoffs and they wouldn't fire him, but then maybe if they have a similar start to next season, that's when we could start thinking about it, but I don't know if they'd fire him yet. So I'm honestly not really sure who I think would be the next coach fired after Travis Green and Alain Vigneault. Let me know if you guys have any suggestions though down below in the comment section. I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this. This next question comes from That One Hockey Kid 29 who says, what is the issue with the New York Rangers prospect development? Just as a fan, you know, watching the games and stuff like that, it's obviously really hard for me to know. I mean, most of that stuff is behind closed doors, but what I will say when it pertains to Kaapo Kakko and Alexis Lafreniere, it's difficult to just solely focus on the development of those 2 players and make that your number 1 priority while you're also trying to build a Stanley Cup contender, a playoff contender, and that's what the New York Rangers have been doing ever since they've drafted Kaapo Kakko and Alexis Lafreniere. So players like Kakko and Lafreniere, they have shorter leashes, I would say. Like, let's say they're playing top line minutes and they're not performing well then they're going to get bumped off that line because the Rangers are trying to win, right? As opposed to, say, Lafreniere was on a team like the Red Wings and he was getting top line minutes. If he wasn't performing, he'd probably still be getting top line minutes because wins aren't a huge deal for the Red Wings yet. So that's one thing I would say has made things a little bit difficult when it comes to developing those guys, because you're trying to do that while also trying to win now, and that's probably not the easiest thing to do, balancing the 2. And speaking of Kaapo Kakko, this is a great segue to our next question from Warren_CF who says, is Kaapo Kakko finally proving the haters wrong? He's been so good defensively with and without the puck, and now the scoring is starting. It does certainly look like Kaapo Kakko is starting to turn things on a little bit. Over the past couple of weeks, he's looked really good. The confidence is there, which I feel like was always the biggest thing with Kaapo Kakko. I feel like sometimes he just get rid of the puck for the sake of getting rid of it instead of holding on to it and making a skilled play, which we know he can do. He's scored a couple of goals lately, and they're goals where it's stuff that he wouldn't even have tried to do in the first 2 seasons of his NHL career. So I would definitely say Kaapo Kakko is starting to turn it on, and it's nice to see him playing with confidence because he's really fun to watch when he's confident, when he's actually trying things. Next up, we have a question from Colby Hemsing who says, is Jesse Puljujarvi a genius for attempting to trademark Bison King? I cannot believe this is actually happening, but I think it's hilarious. If he does actually get the trademark, I'm interested to see what he does with it. Is he going to make merch or something like that? I mean, I would buy it. If he makes Bison King merch, I'll buy some and give some away to you guys. I think that would be hilarious. Moving along now, we have a question from Rob Douglas who says, where do you see Vrana settling into Detroit's roster when he returns from injury? I think obviously he's propelled right into the top 6 and probably the second power play unit, maybe not the first right away. I would say the first line stays intact. I can't see Detroit breaking up their Bertuzzi, Larkin, and Raymond line just because they've played so good together this season. So I feel like when Vrana's back, we're probably going to see Raymond, Larkin, Bertuzzi stay the same, and then on the second line, we'll see Vrana centered by Pius Suter, and then on the other wing have Philip Zadina, and then bump Robbie Fabry down to the third line. And that is honestly going to do wonders for the Red Wings depth. I'm so excited for Vrana to come back. Ever since the rebuild has started, Detroit's bottom 6 has been a pretty big problem. The depth just hasn't been there. They've never had the luxury of having a player like a Robbie Fabry on the third line, so I'm kind of excited to see what the lineup looks like when Vrana gets back. Next up, we have another Red Wings question. This one comes from Bradley, who says, what would you trade from the Red Wings for DeBrusk? Also, I really appreciate the kind words. As a Red Wings fan, I wouldn't want the team to give up too much. I'm not the biggest fan of Jake DeBrusk, although he is very intriguing. I mean, he's had a 27-goal season, and he's still relatively young. I mean, I would think like maybe a guy like Vladislav Nemestikov, who's playing really well this season, sell high on him and then maybe throw in like a third-round draft pick or something like that. Other than that, though, I can't really think of anything realistic that I would love. Detroit does have, you know, a decent amount of wingers. Like if Jake DeBrusk came to Detroit, would he even be playing in the top 6? Probably not. He'd probably still be playing on like the third line. And obviously, I think probably the biggest reason why he wants to trade in the first place is because he wants more ice time. He wants to play in a team's top 6, so I don't really know if Detroit would be the best fit. This next question comes from Charlie NG, who says, thoughts on the jersey throwing? Vancouver and Montreal both did it. Honestly, I feel like it is kind of stupid. I feel like when this happens, it's usually just a fan trying to send a message or get the attention of a team in order for them to make changes, stuff like that. In reality, fans who throw jerseys on the ice, I can guarantee you most of them are probably still fans of the team that they threw the jersey of. They probably still watch, they probably still cheer for them. I mean, it is their jersey, they bought it, they can do whatever they want with it, but man, hockey jerseys are really expensive. You would never catch me throwing a jersey on the ice, no matter how bad the Red Wings were. Next up, this question comes from Ninja TV, who says, Pierre LeBrun brought up the possibility of Price trade this year, possibly to Edmonton or Colorado. What do you see being the odds of this happening, and what kind of return would we see with Price's term, cap hit, and personal problems? I would say the odds of this happening are like 1 in 10,000. I honestly just can't see it. He makes too much money. There's still too much term left on the deal as well. Montreal would probably have to eat half of that cap hit just to trade Carey Price, and that's something I can't see them wanting to do. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I really just cannot see it happening. It's an interesting thought. I'm kind of surprised Pierre LeBrun even brought it up though, because again, I feel like it's just so slim the chances of it actually happening. Because remember, he was literally exposed in the expansion draft. Seattle could have taken him for free and they decided not to. So I feel like that kind of tells you everything you need to know there. Next up, we have a question from Rob Stelly, who says, to me, the goaltending spot for the US Olympic team is wide open. Who do you see being their number 1? Demko, Campbell, Gibson, or Connor Hellebuck? I think Hellebuck is almost a lock to be their number 1. I feel like they are still going to go based off of reputation more so than results just solely based off of this season, because if you look at even just going back to the start of last season, I mean, it would be pretty hard not to have Jack Campbell as the starter, right? He's been amazing, but I am pretty confident they'll go with Connor Hellebuck as a starter. I feel like the 3 goaltenders that they're going to carry will be Hellebuck, probably John Gibson, and I would say Jack Campbell. It's going to be a pretty hard decision no matter which way they decide to go with it. Next up, from Matt Gardner, after the Sens winning 2 in a row, can they turn their season around to a respectable record, or is it tank time? Also, I appreciate the support. For the Senators, I feel like they're already kind of too far out of it. I know it is still, all things considered, early in the season, but I just don't think that team has the talent to be able to go on a magical run and, you know, get back into playoff contention. I feel like one more year of tanking definitely couldn't hurt, giving themselves the best chance possible at a Shane Wright, or second overall, maybe a Matthew Savoy. I know Pierre Dorian before the season said the rebuild's over, it's time to start winning, but they're kind of at a dangerous point in the rebuild where if they start to try and come out of it too early, maybe sell off some futures to get players that can help them win now, this is a team that could be stuck just being mediocre for a long time, so I don't want that to happen. This question comes from Hatrick Kane, who says, thoughts on Hartman and Foligno leading the Wild in goals at the moment? Who could have seen that coming? Yeah, I mentioned it in yesterday's video. I said Ryan Hartman has probably been the most surprising player this season. I'd say it's him and Troy Terry kind of in that conversation. If those guys can keep this up throughout the season, not quite at this pace of course, I'm sure they'll slow down a little bit, but let's say Hartman and Foligno both finish with 25 plus goals, and you still have Eriksson Ek, Kaprizov, Kevin Fiala. That's a dangerous offense. The Wild might be legit this year, and honestly, I'm all for that. I hope to see them go on a deep playoff run because they're really fun to watch. This question comes from Avery JD, who says, what are your thoughts on Seattle's good play recently? In the past 7 games, they're 5-1-1 and have won games against some of the top teams: Caps, Canes, Panthers, and Oilers. They definitely look to be turning it around. I watched their game against the Panthers and the Capitals, and I watched their game really closely when they played against the Red Wings, and it just looks like this team is getting used to each other. It seems like some players are really starting to get good chemistry together, and obviously the biggest thing is they're actually getting saves lately from both Philip Grubauer and Chris Drieger, who were both absolutely miserable to start the season off. If those two even had average starts to the season, I feel like Seattle would be in a really good spot right now, but they did take a little bit of time to get used to a new team, which is to be expected. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is just they're finally getting goaltending. This next question comes from Dexter Jetster. I love the profile picture and name. Will Matt Murray ever be an NHL goalie again, or was he just good with the defense in front of him in Pittsburgh? I definitely don't think his time in the NHL is up, at least yet anyways. I mean, look at a guy like Martin Jones, who's still got, a 1-year, $1 million deal with the Flyers in the offseason, coming off of like 3 or 4 consecutive poor seasons with the Sharks. I would like to see Matt Murray go somewhere where he could be maybe not even just like a complete full-on backup, but like a 1B option, similar to the situation Martin Jones is in Philadelphia. We know Carter Hart's 1A, Martin Jones is kind of 1B. I feel like at this point that would probably be the best thing to revitalize Matt Murray's career, but it's kind of hard to move him because of that contract. And now for the final question of today's Ask Me Anything, this comes from Kieran McCormack, who says, at this point, who would you rather start a franchise with, Quinn, Jack, or Luke Hughes? Well, to start off, I'm going to eliminate Luke Hughes from the conversation just because we haven't seen him play in the NHL yet, and I feel like it's a little bit too early to tell, what his ceiling is, and I'm not the greatest when it comes to prospects. My main focus is on players who are already in the league, so I feel like it's definitely between Quinn and Jack, and honestly, I'm going to go with Jack Hughes. I know in the sample size we've seen from their careers so far, Quinn has been more impressive, I would say, but Jack Hughes is a year younger, and I'm a big proponent of starting your franchise with like a great number 1 centerman. Like whenever I do fantasy drafts in NHL GM mode and stuff like that, I usually go for like a number 1 centerman right away. And although Jack Hughes' first couple seasons were pretty underwhelming for a first overall pick, I'm still confident that this guy can develop into easily a top 20 centerman in the NHL. He's electric offensively, and he's gotten off to a really good start this season. He's already showing signs of that. I really don't think there's a wrong answer when choosing between Jack and Quinn Hughes to start a franchise, but just for me personally, I'll go with Jack. So that is going to wrap up today's episode of the Ask Me Anything series. I really hope you guys did enjoy. Like I said at the start, I apologize to all of you guys who left a comment and it wasn't featured in today's video, but again, just know I've read it and I do appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed today's video and you want to see more Ask Me Anythings every Monday, be sure to leave this video a like, and of course, if this is your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.